Hey everybody, welcome back. So I wanted to talk to you guys today about my plan to get, which I'm on a journey myself. I'm going to do what's called an elimination diet. This is my plan to try to figure out some of my diet issues and why I have so much trouble losing weight, just to be quite frank. I have tried many diets, and we've talked about that in multiple videos, which we can link to, but I've never had any success, not any long-term success anyway. So as I've been on this journey with the program I'm doing for health coaching, I have come across some great information about how to make changes that can be sustainable and long-term. And I'm going to just go ahead and preface that all the information I'm going to give you today is based off of a lecture by Tom Maltier. He has done a lot of research in the realm of elimination diets, and this lecture and a lot of this information comes from the lecture that he gave to our class. So what is an elimination diet? What does this mean? I wanted to start by talking to you guys about where does most of the disease processes start in the body. So most of the time, disease processes are due to an imbalance in our gut. So let's look at this. I've drawn you a little picture. This is the villi in your stomach. They're little finger protrusions. And around that area are little cells. And 70% of our immune cells are in the gut. And they are responsible for determining what things we bring into our body, whether they're safe, whether they're not safe, whether they're a virus, whether they're a bacteria, and whether they need to launch an attack, basically. So these little cells, they meet up with the food particles that you take in, basically, and recognize them or not. So a lot of what's going on in our food culture today is we're eating a lot of foods that are processed, highly processed. They have a lot of chemicals and things that these cells don't recognize. So it's causing our body to be launching immune responses to things we eat. And this is creating a lot of imbalance in our gut, which opens us up not only to the foods we eat, but to other things coming into the body that they actually need to be attacking. They're not able to because they're so caught up in this response to the foods we're eating. There's been a huge shift. I'd say, he didn't really give a time frame, but the last 20 years or so, I would say our food system has really changed to be so highly processed. And we've seen a huge growth in allergic reactions. People now have so many allergies to peanuts and gluten and things like that. So that's a big shift that's happened. Another thing is we've seen a shift in our microbes. These are microbes that live here in our stomach that are helping us with our defense. And when we sanitize constantly, which our culture, especially in today's world, I know, we've become a society that sanitizes constantly. And in doing that, we're not only killing bad bacteria, but we're affecting these bacteria that we need to function. And because of the missing microbes, this creates a decrease in the feedback, which results in our immune system overreacting. So it's all a cycle that leads back to an overreaction of our own immune system against the things that we take into our body as food. Okay, so another thing that's happened is there's been such an increase in the use of acid blockers. So when they first came out, and I've heard Dr. Mark Hyman refer to this a lot in his podcast, the drug reps came to them and said this is to be used for a short-term course treatment for an ulcer. That's what they were for. They were not ever meant to be a long-term solution to someone having acid reflux or heartburn. And they've become over-the-counter now. So you don't even have to go to the doctor to find out what's really wrong with you. You can just go to the store and buy whatever kind of acid blocker and treat yourself. And because of this, we have reduced our body's ability to break down food. It takes the acid that's inside our stomach to break down the food particles and take out the nutrients that we need. And without that, we're not getting the most we should out of the food that we're trying to break down. And then finally, there's a lot of chemicals added to the products we use in our everyday life that we don't even think about. And because of these chemicals, there has been a shift in this microbiome. It's impacted the microbiome to the point that it's affecting how we interpret things. So I was reading back through some notes, and it says that if you're using certain chemicals, which are added to everyday products like lotions, skincare products, and that kind of thing, that it can make you 400 times more sensitive to foods, to giving you food sensitivities and allergies. We don't think about the chemicals that we're putting on our skin as makeup and that we're using for lotion or that we're shampooing our hair with, but they impact. The body has to deal with these chemicals. It has to either recognize them or not. And so it all plays a part in how this area works, basically. All right, so I want you to think about something huge. An elimination diet sounds like we're just getting rid of everything. And I have a list here that we're going to go over of things that you shouldn't eat. But I want you to think about it not as eliminating foods, but as eliminating your symptoms. Let's talk about what you're going to gain from an elimination diet. First of all, there is not a one-size-fits-all diet, and that's where I've gone wrong my whole life. I've done every program out there. I've read every diet book, and it works short-term for me, but it's never been a long-term solution. So the reason is because what works for you is not going to probably work for me, and what is going to work for me is not going to work for you. So what you gain from an elimination is it's called bio-individuality. That simply means it's your own personal diet. What does your body function at its optimum level when you eat it? What things do you need to eat to help your body achieve that? So I wrote this at the top because it is so true. Food is powerful. It is probably our best weapon, medicine, you name it. But we have to be eating the right kinds of food, and we have to be eating what our body needs. And the only way we're going to do that is to figure out what those foods are. And that's where the elimination diet comes in. So I wanted to talk to you about the guidelines that I'm going to use for my elimination diet. Now, I've done some detox programs in the past, and most of the time they're about 10 days. But in my schooling, they were talking about these cells. We have memory cells. And so when you eat something, it comes into the body, and this memory cell says, oh yeah, that's broccoli, we're good. Or it says, I don't recognize what that is, we need to launch some kind of attack. So it takes about 28 days for the cells to turn over and for these memory cells to be fresh. So what happens sometimes is people think they're sensitive to things because they've done a short-term elimination, but it's simply because there's still some of those memory cells hanging out that remember, oh yeah, we shouldn't, that's gluten, we don't want that. So I want to make sure I do a good cleanse of my system this time. So I'm going to do 28 days on the program. The largest irritants that most people have are these 5: eggs, dairy, gluten, soy, and corn. So I'm going to leave all of those out of my diet for 28 days. What comes after that, right? So 28 days, I have cleansed my system. And I see how I feel. And during this time, it's really important to be journaling, writing down things. That way you know how you feel and kind of what's going on. And especially at this next part. So after I've completed the 28 days, I'm going to come back and on day 29, I'm going to eat an egg. I'm going to see how I feel. And then repeat that for 3 days with each of these foods. Now, something that's super important is that you're not having egg mixed up with other ingredients. I think it's important that you have a plain egg with no seasoning. Not the greatest tasting, it might not be, but it's going to give you a true result about the egg or the dairy or the gluten. So where I've gone off course many times is I do the detox and I do fine with that. But when I go to add things back, I add back too much into that at one time. So it needs to be tested individually. I'm even going to go so far this time when you talk about gluten, I want to test my einkorn flour. So I'm going to test it individually. And that might be an important part of my grain testing is to look at some different types of grains. Because I don't think that grains are created equally. I think that modern day grains have they're a lot more processed and there's a lot more additives. So I want to see where I stand in that realm. I'm going to take like corn and look at it individually. I'm not going to mix it up with other ingredients. Even if I've already added back dairy, I'm not going to do corn and cheese and all kinds of things in a dish. I'm going to test the ingredients in their purest form, the purest whole food form. The other thing I'm going to do throughout this process is feed my good gut bacteria. So this is a healing process for your body because you're removing the irritants. So I'm going to make sure there's 4 main things I'm going to make sure I'm doing. I'm going to try to repopulate with a probiotic that helps the good gut bacteria grow. I'm going to eat fermented foods, which also play into that repopulation. It supports that. Fiber is also an important part of this whole process. So you get that by eating the real whole food form of fruits, vegetables, and that type of thing, because you get the fiber out of the skin and that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to also work on ways to reduce my stress. This is a good time to practice journaling, some self-care activities, yoga, things that kind of put you in a calm state, because your body is going to be trying to heal itself. So you need to support your body in that. So that's some important things to be doing throughout this process. Now, I'm going to talk to you here. This is going to maybe a little controversial, but I think it's super important, so I'm going to address it. During the elimination diet, if you've never been one that ate organic, it's important. It's super important. The foods and the chemicals that are in our foods are what's disrupting this system. So the only way to cleanse your body of those is to eat organic grown foods. We also need to look at our environmental toxins, and I've already mentioned that. You need to look at your skincare products. If you have Glade air fresheners or plug-ins or whatever, all of the things in your environment are creating a disruption. And we need to be aware of that. So I would recommend that you either limit the use of those products during this time. I personally have gotten rid of all of them out of my life. I've tried to go with natural products. Also, bone broths and soups are a good thing to help support your system during this time. Have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you're going to fail on the elimination. You've got to have the foods at your house to have for a snack, to cook for meals, because eating out is not going to be a part of this process. If you don't plan it, it's not going to be successful. So please, please, please have a plan. So generally, once you have established what things you're intolerant to, you need to leave those out of your diet for about 6 months. This allows your body time to heal. And so what I'm trying to tell you here is that none of this is meant to be a long-term solution. So I think it's important that after 6 months, you go back and retest. Let's say it was gluten. You go back and you retest gluten and you see if you're continuing to have that intolerance. The body can heal itself. It is just phenomenal how the body can do that. And so you may not need to leave that out permanently. So that's the good news about this elimination process, is that you're really going to find out what you need to leave out. But there's hope that somewhere down the line you'll get to re-add foods that you need. Our body needs a variety of nutrients to function at optimum level. And leaving out entire food groups is not a long-term solution. And I don't think it's a good solution. It's certainly not one I've been able to live with. And I think if it's going to be a true long-term lifestyle change, it has to be something we can live with, or it's not going to work. So I hope that this all made sense, first of all, but I hope also that it makes you stop and think about a different approach to your health. It's not about a short-term diet, or certainly not one of those like extreme diets. I think we have to give our body a chance to heal itself, and then we have to feed it with real whole foods. And if you feed your body with real whole foods, there's not a lot of room for the junk. So that's what's really cool about the whole process. So I'm going to challenge you now to think about your own elimination, especially if you're having any health problems or you're trying to lose weight. And I'm going to be vlogging my whole journey, so you're going to get to see how it goes for me. I'm going to share some recipes and some tips along the way, and I'm going to let you know what was hard, maybe what was easier. And we can certainly do this together. So hopefully you'll get your ingredients together, make your plan, and let's get started. Please hit that subscribe button and like this video, and I'll see you next time.